Imagine opening your email to find years of history deleted. Only a single email remains. A ransomware request for $2 million. You think to yourself, how could this happen to me? You see, there's two types of companies. Those that have been hacked and those that will be hacked. The weight of responsibility comes crashing down on you. It's the sort of responsibility you feel when your family is craving a delicious pizza. You finally open the box only to find the most cringeworthy topping that you mistakenly ordered. Join Pineapple on Pizza podcast as John and George, along with guest executives, discuss the most common and craziest cybersecurity risks, followed by actionable tips and strategies that can be implemented to protect your cyber risk pie. Pineapple on Pizza is hosted by Omnistruct.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Pineapple on Pizza. Today we have an amazing guest. She's CEO of Xeo Air, drone pilot, FAA Safety Team representative, and a podcast host of her own. Welcome to the CEO of Bronwyn Morgan. Thank you, Bronwyn, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I mean, what an incredible name for a podcast. So this is going to be very fun.
Well, and then we're going to lead right into the question and get you started. So if cyber risk was a pizza with cybersecurity frameworks being the crust, what's the riskiest topping you've seen and what topping would you equate that to?
Wow. I would say probably I have actually heard of peanut butter. And I know I was like, that's wow, that's a lot of risk taking with a lot of things blended in. I would say that equates to a perfect analogy with cybersecurity because it's always things coming from the left that you didn't expect. And that can cause an incredible disruption and some significant security risks. So I would say, yeah, it's like you didn't see that coming. And that's how, things that are on the other side of security work, you never see them coming.
I've seen peanut butter on burgers, but never on a pizza. So that is something new and something definitely for our audience to give a shot. Just, but keep your cybersecurity out of that one. Let's
exactly
on the pizza.
Exactly.
But that is a unique one. And thanks for sharing on that one. I think that's great.
Yeah, I think you win the award for the most unexpected topping.
Yes, bizarre. Yeah, so, somebody else suggested that, and I was like, yeah, no. So yeah, I'm a pretty standard girl. Give me my pepperoni, and I'm good to go.
I'll have to look for that and see if I can find that somewhere. So Bronwyn, tell us in your role as CEO, what keeps you up at night?
Oh my God! Right now, it's everything. It is, autonomy. Battery life and fuel cells, cybersecurity, weather, communication tools for better data transfer, and raising money. So all these things are keeping me up at night right now.
Probably the weight of the drones and how long they can stay in the air and all the other pieces that are there. So
absolutely.
They've got a number of things that are moving, and yeah, I can definitely see that.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the weight factor. I think that's everything and anything that flies in the air, because that's whether it's power or fuel.
Absolutely.
Would keep me up if I was your industry, that's for sure.
I mean, it depends on how what the payload is, and you need a bigger bird to carry more things on board to do better inspection or better observation. So it's really a challenge. We got to go bigger. To go bigger, you need bigger batteries or electric, and then that means more cost. So there's a lot to consider in our space.
So tell us a little bit about the space that you're in. So obviously we're talking drones, and you talked to us a little bit about the cybersecurity of those. But tell us a little bit about what's the problem that you've seen in the industry.
Yeah, so this is a growing industry, still extremely young. I think people have been expecting a lot more out of it than what the regulators and what the equipment will allow us to do just yet. So, we're waiting on things such as beyond visual line of sight to be consistently available to us, which means that we have to get better at detect and avoid systems. And so all of this, starts to add up. And then back to the point you were just making, it is about, time aloft. How long can we stay up? How far can we go? And that's going to drive everything from drone delivery. I'm in the inspection and mapping space myself here at Xeo, but that impacts us as well. And if I've got somebody on site, a pilot doing an inspection, I like to stay up as long as possible, because that means that this person doesn't have to bring the bird back down, change out batteries. And I can go further if I'm doing a cluster or array of assets to inspect. And then as we get into autonomy, which is huge, and everybody's kind of, chomping at the bit, there's a lot that we've got to demonstrate and prove out when it comes to safety. But then that also goes back to batteries and fuel cells. And, I can go far, but if I don't have a battery, I'm going to fall out of the sky. So there are quite a few things that we're all, looking forward to seeing develop and grow as we evolve.
Great. And so tell us a little bit about what your company does and how you've solved that solution.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we certainly haven't solved it yet, but we are an outsourced AI-based drone services, data analytics, and autonomous mission management platform. So we allow customers, I kind of call it the Uber of the drone industry. We allow customers in our target verticals to be able to come into our platform, build a mission, we fly it, and do the data processing, data analytics through deep learning and machine learning, and then provide them that data back. We're focused on infrastructure, critical infrastructure sectors, civil infrastructure, catastrophic response, and climate and environmental observation. And we're also building out our own autonomous assets so that, as, time, comes along, we're ready. So we're building our own drone, also our own drone towers. So yeah, we're ready not only for now where we're behind the controllers, but as we start as pilots to move away from the controllers and fly autonomously.
And what exactly are you mapping? I mean, you mentioned some civil items. You mentioned, so how would that work? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So on the inspection side, we're telecom, utilities, energy, which would be wind and solar, and then civil, of course, bridges, highways, roadways, dams, waterways. And, most of that work is inspection, but we could be doing a mapping project for one of those customers as they're doing an installation of new equipment, doing an analysis of their current assets inventory. Also, if we're doing catastrophic response, we could, map an area, whether it is pre or post a wildfire, pre or post a hurricane. And if we're doing climate or an environment, there's a variety of different potential executions from, glacial to forest to coastal, farming. It really does depend on what the customer needs and how we can provide them data back, analyze so they can better, assess the health and or the conditions of their particular assets.
That's great. So how are things now? I mean, so it sounds like we're doing a lot of waiting for some of these items for the FAA to agree, and some of the autonomy and batteries. And so what's your prediction on that? I mean, how do you think that's going to go? And when will I start to be able to take my drone from my house to the grocery store and back?
Well, each of those things has its own, timeline, I think. We're out doing inspections every day. We've got the pilot out there with the drone, so we're still able to conduct business. But when it comes to some of those things that you mentioned, we still are a bit of, we're a ways away. There's a lot of tests underway right now on beyond visual line of sight all over the country with different organizations and entities testing that. Also, different fuel cells, hydrogen-based drones, or fuel for drones. Companies are working on extended battery life, as well as electric, obviously, with the eVTOLs. So all of this work is going on right now. I would say that, by the time we get to the end of 2025 or so, we should start to see more applications of beyond visual line of sight. Also from a battery perspective or a fuel cell perspective, I think we're just going to continue to see that grow and grow and grow. It really is just about physics. It's about access to, all the components that are needed. So it'll be, it will continue to evolve. But if you're going to be flying to the grocery store, you definitely need to have your Part 107, and be careful about flying over people, and make sure there's someone on the other end that will be able to, put your Snickers bar on your drone and send it back. But that requires a lot of elements to come into play. So be careful.
I often think of the common applications of drones. The first thing that comes to mind of the average person, you say drones, they think, oh, delivery.
Yeah.
Delivery. So, but I know there's other applications because I've seen them. Okay.
Right.
What do you think was the most, at least surprising application in the use of a drone? Knowing that you operate, as kind of like this option, as an outsource option, I imagine you've seen plenty of requests. So what are some of the ones that maybe we haven't thought of?
Wow. Well, I think we're just starting to scratch the surface here. People are doing all kinds of transport planning around drones, for delivery especially, and we're not in the delivery business, but as we get to larger drones and urban air mobility or advanced air mobility, we're going to see these drones being used for emergency medical response. I think that, one of the things that I don't know if it's so unusual, but it certainly is an asset, and that's the work that Matternet has been doing with UPS in delivering medical supplies and equipment in I think South Carolina. And so that is, what a great use of drones. And I think we're going to see that continue to grow with organs, being flown across a certain geography. Also equipment for first responders. It could be a defibrillator or other, certain equipment that's needed right on site before you even get taken to a hospital that can be used to save your life. And as we think about the whole idea of rural environments where access to medical, needs is limited, it's dwindling away, being able to send supplies and equipment and other very necessary medical elements to those areas will be a game changer. And so that's, one thing that's exciting, but, can you imagine a heart, flying through the air to, beat the traffic so that it can save your life? Those are the kinds of things that I get most excited about. And I think the second one is, what NASA's been doing on the moon with their own little drone / helicopter, if you will, helidrone, and being able to do mapping and assessing of the Mars. I think all of that's incredible. And as we go further and further and further in, drones are going to be everywhere, all over the Earth and probably other planets as well. So a lot of off-planet work as well.
I think I've seen that tattoo with the heart with the wings. No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly. That's what it's going to be. Eyes, hearts, livers, kidneys. A sky full of organs flying around. But what a blessing that is.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I had not thought of, how I have now, but prior to this, I had not thought of such an application.
Yeah.
Still delivery, right? So delivery of something.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
That's, I think, the only applications I can think of off the top of my head are surveil and delivery.
Yeah.
So
right. And inspection, like we do, agriculture, entertainment. I don't know what movie is shot right now without using drones. So, all the cinematography, all of these usual applications. And, on the civilian side, then of course you have the military use, which, a whole different use case. But yeah, the use cases will build. And then eventually, your ambulance may actually come down as a large drone, pop you in, and then send you off to the nearest medical center. So you don't have to worry about the big, heavy helicopter trying to find a space to land, to pop you into a big, ambulance drone and take you off.
Yeah. I think in prep for this call, we've actually had quite a few calls with folks that specialize something drone related. We even have a few clients that are DoD subcontractors. But so I decided that right before this call that I was going to look to see when did drones first start kind of showing up. And generally, you're going to see it on the television screen first and foremost, or in the news, right?
Right.
So I just did a little homework, and there's actually a Wikipedia site for a list of films featuring drones. And so often what you see on, and the average, I think, technical person is going to say, I bet you it was Star Trek, right? And the kind of that creative mind of the Star Trek series. And what's interesting is that there's a site that even exists where they feature drones. I think it's a representative of where the market is, because there's tons of and on that site there's tons of, and you can just Google it to find it, but there's tons of applications that they talk about in the movies, and whether or not they come to fruition or not. That was kind of the impetus for my question on what other applications. You do see generally unique applications that we met somebody that was in construction, right? Drones flying through before you do a demo building, right? So inside of a building.
Absolutely.
So it's great to see those varying applications, and I really am just astounded by that concept for using drones in medical delivery of organs. I mean, that's just an amazing application that can make a huge difference. So thanks for sharing.
It can. And I mean, if you're in a hospital and you're in an emergency and you're desperately waiting for an organ, every second counts for the organ and for you. And so being able to, speed that up is getting it to you safely and on time means everything.
So tell me this. I mean, during your inspections, I mean, are you currently doing those inspections? What's the biggest safety thing that you've found by doing these automated or drone inspections of these infrastructures? Has there been anything that's been really a standout of, wow, I'm really glad we found that? Or
yeah, I would say yes. And I think about it more now on the catastrophe side, where we've been called to inspect a dam or a roadway that's falling apart, which has incredible implications of, do we need to evacuate immediately because this dam is about to go, or it's not about to go yet, but in the next, week, you're probably going to have some serious degradation. Those kinds of things, really push you because you're already in an environment that's very precarious. So you're hoping that as you're driving down a road, and we've been lucky enough often to have law enforcement escorts because they know the area to say, hey, this is okay. This is still a road, but you don't want to get into fast moving water. Now you've got a problem as a pilot. And the other one also in that same space is on the climate and catastrophe side is like beach erosion. And it can mean everything for a community if they've got a very thriving beachfront area. All of that has significant implications, because that means that in the next 3 months, a year to 5 years, what was actually the beachfront may now have to be moved, and that business, private residential, massive implications. Yeah. So those kinds of things, because if you're doing a tower, you might see some loose wires where there's been a lightning strike on, say, a wind turbine, and that's fairly routine. But when you get into some of these more anomalous categories where you're not sure what you're going to see. If you're doing a glacier, you might see a fissure that no one knew was there. And that means that this thing could break off in the next, month, couple of days, and have a significant impact on that region. So I think that using drones and aerial sensors is going to save us in a lot of instances. But it provides so much more safety for the individuals that are having to do, that work versus trying to use some of the more conventional tools. So yeah, I think it's massive, and we have seen some very interesting dynamics as a result of that.
Makes me think of I live in Sacramento, so the example of inspection of a dam resonates for me. We have a large dam here called the Oroville Dam that actually had some issues. I think it was 2018 that we had a lot of water come through, and the spillway failed on that dam. It made not as memorable these days because that was a long time ago by today's standards. But so flooding, fires, even inspection of what essentially are, well, let's say who it is, right? So the power companies and their lines running through the forests in the summer, and tree falls, hits the power line, then you got a big wildfire in your hands, sort of situation, right?
Yeah.
So definitely lots of applications out there, and I think our natural go-to is, okay, so what about the risks associated with the safety and security side are obviously hand in hand. So safety and the drone dropping from the air, whatever the situation may be. I'm sure you know
Right.
a lot more about that than we do, but
Right.
we're always very concerned about what do you do to keep out the bad guys, so to speak, in your
Yeah.
operation. What is I think that's probably what keeps you up at night item. But
It
definitely,
is. This is something that it's a challenge for the entire everything autonomous, from cars to drones, robots. And this is a significant threat to our industry and how we operate. And so, one of the things so there are a couple of places where this comes into play. It's your data once you actually, gather it, and keeping it safe on your servers. So you want to keep that safe so nobody jumps in to get it. And then you've got the safety of your assets, your drones, your towers, your cars, your robots, whatever the case may be. All of that presents significant threats because, to your point, if it falls into the hands of the bad guys, then, the very thing that you were doing with the equipment can now be used against you. And so that causes us in these spaces to have to budget for the best cybersecurity that we can buy. And on a startup, that can be pretty daunting, but we have to have it. The other piece is, there are certain security standards, especially if you're doing work for the government. So having to be compliant with, FedRAMP, which is a protocol for how data is gathered and stored for government projects, is a big piece of what you have to consider, because it's as you're gathering data, it's in the data transfer to make sure no one interrupts that to then gather, to steal that data, interrupt your flow of data. Then once you get it to your to your server, like I said, keeping it safe. If you're pushing it out to any other tools for any other work that you're doing, any other API that you have integrated, making sure that stays safe if it's going to a third party. And then you got to most likely bring it back, and then the customer has to gather it. And you're pushing data out, or they're pulling it out. There's so many places in this supply chain where you have to be concerned about keeping this all secure. And there's some good hackers out there, and it is a concern. How do we keep all of this safe? Whether you're driving your electric autonomous vehicle down the road, or if it's sitting in your driveway, someone starts it, backs out, takes it on a joyride of hell. Same thing with your drone. And then some of the data, especially that we collect in the areas that we, focus on, is very sensitive. And this data has to be very secure, because it can provide, real blueprints to infrastructure that really belongs only to that customer. So you have to be extra vigilant in how you're managing this, making sure that you're checking your platforms and doing routine audits almost daily now to make sure that there's no disruption. We've been hacked in our platform, and we had to go back and rebuild it. Thankfully, none of our data was impacted because it was sitting in a server. But yeah, it's and sometimes people are just doing like front end stuff to be mean. But when that part you can rebuild, is it's a web facing website, public facing platform. But when you start getting back into behind the scenes stuff where things are kind of operating on their own, or you've got an AI model operating to run things, and also where your data stored, now you're playing with fire, and you got to make sure that you've got all the right pieces in place.
I can see that you definitely understand the mindset that I think a lot more security professionals share, which is that compromise is a matter of when. But making sure that your data, I like to say that, your data, where it lives, and that sensitive data and how critical it is, where you're making most of your investments. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, I mean, like you said, there's some good hackers. I would argue that there's the hackers are almost like the organized crime bosses.
They are.
They're after some kind of a reward. And I'm
And
not
it's
arguing,
usually your money. It's
usually,
usually for ransom, or if it's an enemy, then they want the data itself. They don't care about the money. They want to know, give me the layout for, whatever it is that you may have access to. Give me social security numbers. Give me, you think about all these different major companies that have been hacked, and they've got big, deep pockets, so they can afford really great cybersecurity and full teams. And they've been hacked, and your consumer data, your credit cards, all your information is now out in the dark web. That's really daunting.
yeah, it absolutely is. And I think what we've learned is that the perception that hackers are just a guy in a hoodie has evolved to not only just a thief, but also an arsonist, a digital arsonist, as we would like to say.
Absolutely.
And where's the cyber fire department that we call when we need that help, so to speak?
Absolutely.
So, ultimately, that's an industry right now is trying to address that problem, and insurance companies and those sorts of things, but, through cyber insurance, cyber liability
Right.
insurance, such.
Right.
But, ultimately, even the large companies can be compromised. Okay. That idea of, you have to prepare for when. And so, and you're right on the money, so to speak, in terms of the idea of, hey, where's this data? Right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the regulations that exist out there are really focused on, even DoD and their initiative for what essentially is classified, or not
Right.
classified. They call it the CMMC for
Yeah.
subcontractors and the standards that they have to meet. Right. So we know that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, thank you so much to hear. It's really great to hear that you understand that.
Yeah.
Right? As
Yeah.
an operator, you have to have a good understanding that that to some degree you can. There's no such thing as 100% secure. So how far do you go? And the answer often is your customer will tell you.
Right.
This is what we need you to do in order to do business in our
Right.
industry, at least these days, right?
Yeah.
But you can't just count on them alone. You also have to take your own initiatives and be aware. And so it's nice to hear that you are aware. So
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, this is a big deal for us, and some of the conversations that we're having, this is critical, to make sure that we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's. And when you've got so many different fences that can be jumped, you've got to make sure that each of those are as secure and reinforced as possible, because it's like someone breaking in your house. It's such a horrible feeling. If you're invaded, and it's not just now your stuff, but it's, you got other people's stuff, and all the man hours that went into it. So at the end of the day, we're a drone company because now we'll be making assets, but we really are a data company. At the end of the day, everything that we have is really to gather data. And we just use, drones and as a way to gather it. So at the end of the day, we're all data companies. And if anybody's confused by that, they need to think again and ensure that they're, utilizing the highest level of security. Because it could be something as simple as you got your drone in your car in the trunk, and someone steals pops your trunk or steals your car. Now they've got, data. And so it might not be anything as sophisticated as someone coming through a digital, pathway. They could just come into your home, into your car. So I think we all have to be very vigilant when it comes to how we think about managing data, because, this is now a civilian operation, and you've got a lot of independent contractors that are working, and it's not just about just using that drone. It is about how you manage the entire process. And because the flip side of that, as you just mentioned, is the liability. And just because you're a single operator does not mean that you're not liable, and people will not come after you. So, our pilots have to be insured. We're insured. But it's like, be careful how you are handling data, because you will suffer the consequences if you did not practice, the right kind of due diligence in your operations.
I think that's a great point about it. All companies pretty much are a data company. It's just a matter of how that data is used. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Tell me, Bronwyn, so what events can we find you at, or find more information about about the industry and some of the things that you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm always on LinkedIn, so people can find me and the companies on LinkedIn. I'll be at AUVSI in Denver. I'll be in 4 different locations hosting a panel, doing my podcast. I got a couple different things going on there. I usually attend AUVSI every year. But people can often find me on LinkedIn, on our Twitter pages, where if I'm doing my own podcast, or I'm on someone else's show, or involved in something, it's always posted. But we as a company are at xeoair.com, xeoair.com, Twitter and Instagram. Let's see, Twitter is at AirXeo, AIRXEO. Instagram is at XEOAIR, if that doesn't confuse you. But yeah, so I mean, I'm findable. And but if you're coming to AUVSI, that's great. I got a couple other little places I'll probably be popping in and out of that we're planning right now, between now and the end of summer. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
So going back to the industry though, so what excites you about the future of where things are headed? I mean, we've talked a little bit about some of these things, but I mean, is there anything in particular that you'd want to share with our audience and us about the future?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, this is going to get so exciting. I'm just excited about, what we in the inspection and mapping space will be able to do with beyond visual line of sight, and being able to autonomously inspect assets from a command and control center, surveil and provide security for customers' assets, to try to prevent or catch bad actors. I mean, this is from somewhere else. I mean, this is where the kind of Star Trek stuff comes into play. Being able to talk to people through the drone, and that's super exciting. And I think also, if you borrow that over to the law enforcement side, it provides a level of safety and security and a lot more accuracy in being able to inspect where the bad guys are, whether they're in a mall, whether they are in a house, a building, wherever that may be, and gather information so that the right resources can be deployed in that moment. I have another company called Airversity, which is professional drone pilot training, and we're focused on commercial, corporate, and law enforcement. And so we've got a couple of different projects that are coming up, and classes also. We have a geospatial class coming up to teach drone operators about geospatial data. What is it? How do you take your photogrammetry and turn that now into geospatial data? What does that mean? So and that doesn't even get into flying cars and flying cargo. I mean, this is all going to be incredible. I think when I can go out for a ride share and then take a flying taxi to the airport and get me there so much faster, and then back home, or to the mall, or to the golf course. I mean, this is where things are going to get really, really fun. The Jetsons, this is the time for the Jetsons, and I'm hoping that in my lifetime, I'll be able to experience some of that.
And in the meantime, I have a request. Please do not do a radar camera for law enforcement that like follows the people here in San Diego as they drive, because they already drive like 80, 90 miles an hour. But yeah, radar cameras that would follow us would be terrible.
I was just there, and actually people were very timid when I was there. I didn't see anything too crazy, but yeah, what a great place to have people speed. If you're going to speed, might as well do it in San Diego.
Yeah, people got places to be. So
That's
tell
right.
us a little bit more about yourself then. I mean, so how did you come up with this idea? Where'd you come from to get here? Let's start there.
Yeah, I mean, everybody that's, heard me talk about this, and to some people it was a surprise. Coming out of high school, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. Women couldn't fly fighters. And I was like, So going to the Air Force Academy, the idea of that took on a different cast, and that was if I got into fighter pilot school. But I was like, if I can't go fast, whatever. And so, went to college at the University of Illinois. And the plan was get a degree in aerospace engineering, work at JPL, apply for NASA, do some fun stuff like that. Didn't do that. Did go to the University of Illinois, but actually wound up leaving there and working for, two major corporate companies in consumer products. But I always found myself in a role in innovation or R&D. So I always just kind of love for things that were outside of the box and innovative. And then I've done a variety of things since then. Worked at the university level in entrepreneurship and innovation. Also became an innovation consultant and kind of worked and done stuff all over the world in different capacities. And when drones came up as a civilian commercial opportunity, I was like, this is my chance. And so got the FAA Part 107 and then, used my business experience to determine what is the business model here. And, here I am. A couple of years later, running these two companies and, with the vision for what the future is going to look like for us around autonomy and equipment and services, and always wanting to go outside the box. But I think my parents, my dad was always the one that was like, since I was an only child, he was prodding me on the boy stuff, let's go look at airplanes, trains, and ships and stuff. So I've got a lot of good, boring conversation for cocktail parties, unless it's with nerds. But yeah, that's cool. I mean, I still love like trains and double hull ships and, the big Supermax cargo ships. I'll read about that. And I'm like, super nerdy stuff. But I find it fascinating. And I think where we're going with artificial intelligence and robotics is exciting. It's scary at the same time. I think what we're seeing now with ChatGPT-4 coming out, we were talking about hacking. Our hackers may not be human. And talk about the ability to go around any kind of firewall. These things can write whatever they need to get in. And I think, I don't know that they'll be, seeking ransom. If so, where would it go? But I think we need to really think hard about what we're turning on here, because I think was it Elon Musk has said that we're opening the door to the devil. And from, what we've been seeing lately, we've got a lot to consider, because once we start, I don't think we can go back.
No, I would agree. So let me ask you this: if you go back in time and give your younger self some advice, what would that advice be?
I would say go harder on math. I had a bad experience in the 4th grade with longhand division and a teacher. And it just kind of spooked me. So even though, I went on to take, more advanced math, I think it was always like kind of stuck in my head, like, oh, can you do this? It's going to be hard. And as you start getting to advanced physics and differential equations, it's just like, while it's certainly not longhand division, it just puts something in your head. So I think we have to be very careful how we talk to children about what they're doing and how they're learning, and make sure that we address how they learn and reach them there. But I think I'd just say go harder and push past the fear and try the things that you may not think will get you down the right path. But I'm also a big believer in destiny, and I think even though your route may be circuitous, you'll get there. But yeah, I think I'd have said you're awesome a little bit more. And I say that every day now. So
yeah,
you're awesome.
When they started adding letters into the math equations, that's when I had a problem.
Oh man. And this new math, I watch it sometimes like on videos, and I'm just like, I've learned some stuff, but then others, I'm like, how did you get there? So yeah, it's a interesting journey, but yeah, I said, go hard on math.
New math. I like that.
Yeah.
I love that, because that's very close to mine. Mine was to go faster in math. So I always struggled. And,
Yeah.
I guess I had the old C's mean degrees attitude as well in the math side. But what I learned is I had to take a calculus class, and I wasn't, I always had an opinion of myself, and, I'm just not that good at it. I'm actually really good at it, but only if I go fast. So I got more points that were available when I took that course in calculus. I took it in a 6-week compressed course. I got more points were available. So I'm better when it goes fast, is what I learned.
Wow. So that's really interesting. Where I have to I have to touch it. So if I can see an equation, if I can write it out, and then I do a comparative to something else that I already know, and kind of do this apples to apple thing, then I'm like, I got it now. But just straight lecture, da, 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 it's not for everybody. And I think we definitely need to change our learning style, because not everybody learns that way, and they could be a genius. They just have a different way of how they capture data and process it. But we just kind of continue with this kind of Platonian methodology. And a lot of people are like, it's just like washing over. But when you stop and they have a chance to, they're like, here we go. And it comes rapid pace. Yeah.
For sure.
Wonderful.
All right, Bronwyn, we appreciate your time on this, and absolutely love learning more about the drones and the infrastructure and the climate change pieces that you're trying to track with your drones. I think that there's going to be an exciting future for both you and your company and how you're moving these forward. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So glad to be
Bronwyn.
here.
To our audience, thanks for listening. If you've learned something today or laughed, you want to take flight of your own, please tell someone about this podcast and share it with everybody. That's it. This has been another great episode of Pineapple on Pizza with your hosts, John and George, and Bronwyn as our guest. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you all for joining another great episode of Pineapple on Pizza. You can find show notes, links, and resources by visiting omnistruct.com/blog. And a huge thank you to all who are preventatively protecting organizations from cyber threats.